Hey guys, tonight we drift far from city lights and glowing screens, past the hum of highways and the buzz of to-do lists, to the soft shores of a Polynesian island where time moves differently and the sea is a language unto itself. It's dawn, but the world still feels half asleep. The breeze brushes through the palm leaves like a whispered secret, and the sand, warm even this early, seems to hug your feet rather than resist them. Just beyond a row of leaning pandanus trees, the shore stretches out in lazy arcs. The tide rolls in with the hush of an old lullaby. You walk slowly, your sandals leaving momentary impressions on the damp sand. The sky above is gently unfolding, smeared with sleepy pastels. Peach, lilac, and a shade of blue that barely knows it's awake. You probably won't survive this particular adventure, mostly because if you do, I'll just loop this story until your brain gives up and melts gloriously into sleep, which honestly is the goal here. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is there right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. A few steps farther inland, you find them. 3 canoes, or rather, canoe hulls. They rest in a shaded clearing, half-carved and glowing faintly in the morning light. Their shapes are unmistakable, long and hollowed, their edges smoothed lovingly by hand. They lie there like sleeping sea creatures, their bellies already familiar, with the idea of water. A small woven canopy hangs between 2 trees, and beneath it sits an elder, legs crossed, eyes half closed, hands slowly rubbing oil into the wood's surface. The scent wafts toward you, coconut and smoke, something ancient and warm. These aren't just boats. In Polynesia, canoes, known by many names like waka, vaka, or wa, depending on the island, are everything. They're vehicles of migration, tools of sustenance, floating temples and family heirlooms. And while most history books might zoom in on wars and treaties and grand cities, tonight you're doing something better. You're learning how to build a canoe. The elder doesn't speak, but he gestures toward the forest behind him. You follow his gaze and see a group of younger villagers walking silently between tree trunks. They carry nothing but curved stone adzes and small bundles of banana leaves tied neatly with fiber twine. There's a rhythm to their steps. It's not urgent. Nothing here is, but it's purposeful. Today they will find a tree. Canoe making doesn't begin with hammering or sawing. It starts with listening. Each tree must be chosen, not just for its size or shape, but for its spirit. The right tree has lived long enough to understand the ocean. It's not about domination, but partnership. The old way holds that if the tree isn't willing, the canoe will never float quite right. You trail behind them into the greenery. The forest welcomes you with a warm hush. Light filters down in vertical strips through layers of fronds, and the air carries that just watered smell, like soil, bark, and the breath of ferns. One man walks ahead, softly tapping trunks with the end of his tool. Another pauses and presses his palm flat against the bark of a particularly tall specimen. They listen, they wait, and occasionally they nod slightly, like they've heard something you haven't. Historians still argue whether these tree-choosing rituals were based on practical experience or spiritual guidance. Some say it's purely science, the right. Tree density, straight grain, minimal knots. Others believe in something more, that the forest gives you permission or it doesn't. You're not sure where you land on that, but as you stand here in the warm green stillness, it feels like something big is listening. Eventually, the group gathers around one particular tree. It's massive, its trunk thick and unblemished, its leaves fluttering slightly even though the air feels still. The eldest among them, the same one you saw earlier by the shore, steps forward and places both hands on the bark. He whispers something. The others do the same. And just like that, the tree is chosen. You exhale slowly, only now realizing how quietly you've been breathing. The preparations begin. Banana leaves are spread in a ring around the base, forming a soft bed. Small offerings, bits of fish, coconut, even a pinch of earth, are placed gently at the roots. The villagers don't explain these rituals, and you don't ask. Some things aren't meant to be analyzed. They're meant to be honored. As the sun climbs lazily overhead, The first careful strikes are made. The adze cuts deep and slow. It doesn't ring out like a metal axe might. It thunks softly, rhythmically. You sit nearby, mesmerized by the deliberate tempo. One cut, pause, another cut, a soft brushing of shavings away. Time stretches. There's no rush. The tree has waited 100 years to become a canoe. It can wait a little longer. A mainstream historical fact hums into your brain. Many Polynesian cultures developed ocean-going canoes capable of traveling thousands of miles, long before Western navigators thought it possible. Their skill wasn't luck. It was precision, science wrapped in ceremony. As the tree begins to yield, you notice something unusual. A small woven pouch is tied just above the spot being cut. It's filled with leaves and feathers, and it swings slightly with every motion of the tool. One of the younger carvers sees your gaze and smiles. To guide the first cut, he says softly, and maybe to keep the tree from changing its mind. You chuckle quietly, the kind of laugh that feels more like a sigh. A fringe theory among some anthropologists suggests that these small charms once contained herbal mixtures meant to calm the spirit of the tree. Others believe they were symbolic, honoring forest deities. Some even think they were just tradition with no deeper meaning at all. But none of that matters right now, because the sun is dappled across the forest floor. The tree is whispering its goodbye, and the canoe, though not yet carved, is already dreaming of the sea. The clearing hums softly with energy, not the loud kind, but something quieter, slower, like the moment before a breeze stirs or the hush between two waves. The first cuts into the tree have already been made, and with them the transformation has begun. The great trunk, still rooted, leans just slightly now, as if beginning to nod in agreement with its new purpose. You settle in beneath a nearby tree, the soil warm and soft, and watch as the group takes turns with the adze. No one rushes. Each stroke is deliberate, almost meditative. They work in pairs. One cuts, the other sweeps away shavings with a palm leaf fan, revealing the path forward. There's something soothing about the pattern. Strike, fan, adjust, breathe. Your mind begins to wander. You imagine the tree, perhaps just a seedling when your great-grandparents' great-grandparents were still wondering about the shape of the stars. Maybe a bird dropped that seed, or a gust of wind carried it from a nearby hill. It grew here, through sun and storm, now ready to become something else entirely. Historians still argue whether the canoe-building process was primarily communal or led by specialist master carvers. Some believe it was a sacred act reserved for a select few. Others point to accounts of entire villages taking part, from children gathering sap to elders preparing ceremonial chants. What you see now feels somewhere in the middle, a few guiding, hands many helping ones. The younger carvers now begin to strip bark from the upper side of the trunk. It peels away in long fibrous sheets, curled at the edges like scrolls. A few of these are laid aside, nothing goes to waste. That bark will later be used for kindling, cord, or patchwork sails. The island has no room for waste. Every part of the tree has a future. You stand and wander a little farther down the slope, where a narrow stream gurgles softly. A young girl is rinsing a wooden bowl, her feet tucked into the cool water, her hair tied up with a strip of banana fiber. She hums as she works, something simple and sweet. You pause listening, and she glances up briefly to smile before returning to her task. That's how things happen here. Everyone has a part, and every part matters. As the day leans into late morning, the tree is finally coaxed into tipping a teal. Final wedge is driven in with a dull thump, and the great trunk eases down onto the leaf-cushioned ground. It lands gently, not crashing, as if it knew this moment was coming. The group exhales as one. Even the breeze seems to pause in respect. The next stage begins hollowing. You return to the clearing just as the first scoops of wood are being carved from the center. The interior of the tree is pale and damp, its grain flowing in tight ripples. The scent is stronger now, woody, almost sweet, like freshly split bamboo. A new rhythm begins, slower, more careful, as the team begins to define the belly of the canoe. One of the elder women arrives with a woven basket of food, mashed taro, wrapped in leaves, slices of ripe papaya, and a thick paste of coconut and breadfruit. Lunch is not announced. It just appears set down on a flat stone in the shade. One by one, the carvers pause, wipe their hands, and take a portion. You follow their lead, the taste rich and grounding, like sunshine mashed into flavor. A few jokes pass between them. One man compares the tree's shape to a sleeping pig. Another claims the canoe already has more personality than his cousin. Laughter bubbles up, not raucous but warm, the kind of humor that floats easily through palm leaves and fades gently into the forest. A mainstream historical fact settles into your thoughts as you sip coconut water from a hollowed shell. Some ancient Polynesian canoes were over 100 feet long, with twin hulls and central platforms large enough to carry whole families, livestock and crops across open ocean. These weren't just boats, they were floating worlds. Here, this single-hull vessel might only span 20 feet when finished, but it will carry fishers into reef channels, transport goods between neighboring villages, maybe even glide alongside. Dolphins on a calm morning. You walk to the canoe's head. The shaping there is delicate, curved slightly inward, a sleek prow forming naturally from the original grain of the tree. One of the carvers explains in a low voice that this is where the spirit lives and no blade touches it until the final night before launch. You nod, even though you're not entirely sure what that means. But again, like so many things here, it doesn't feel necessary to understand fully, just to witness, to respect. A small boy approaches, no older than 6, dragging a smooth branch behind him. He kneels beside the canoe, eyes wide, and begins to mimic the ad strokes with his stick. No one stops him. The older carvers glance over and smile. That's how learning happens: quiet imitation, repetition, play. A fringe tradition bubbles up from some corner of memory, one that suggests apprentice carvers weren't formally taught at all. Instead, they were simply allowed to watch and copy, building their skills by instinct and osmosis. No manuals, no lectures, just generations of observation baked into muscle memory. As the afternoon deepens, a light drizzle begins, soft and brief like the sky wiping its face. The scent of the wood changes slightly, sharper now mingled with rain and earth. The canopy above rustles but holds firm, keeping the worksite dry. No one rushes for cover. They just pause, tilt their faces up, and smile. When the rain passes, the light has changed again, gold now and softer. The canoe's interior is wider, deeper. The shape is unmistakable. It looks like it's waiting, not impatiently, just calmly aware of its future. You sit beside it, running your fingers lightly over the smoothed surface. It's cool and solid. It doesn't speak, but you feel something, some quiet pride. It knows what it's becoming. A new day begins gently, the kind of morning that arrives on tiptoes. You wake to the scent of damp leaves and a hint of wood smoke, the light just beginning to stretch across the village, clearing like a warm shawl. The canoe rests where you left. But it seems somehow different now, more certain of itself, the way a pup starts to look like a full-grown dog once you blink. The shaping continues today, but this time with finer tools. Gone are the heavier adzes. Instead, the carvers use delicate chisels and scrapers, some made of coral, others from sharpened bone. They move like calligraphers now, not just removing wood, but coaxing lines into being, following the grain as if tracing the curve of a story. You sit nearby on a folded mat, woven from pandanus, watching as they begin to carve the canoe's interior, ribs. These aren't structural, not strictly. They serve more as guides, gentle suggestions for where the hull will bow and where the sides will taper. It's part function, part poetry. The balance of lines must be just right, or the canoe won't sing through the water. That's how one of the elders puts it. A canoe must sing, not shout. A historical fact floats gently into your thoughts. Polynesian canoes often featured intricate carvings, not only for beauty, but to honor spirits, ancestors, or deities believed to guide the vessel. Some canoes were thought to have personal names and personalities. They were blessed before launch, spoken to, apologized to even if something went wrong. Here you see that reverence echoed in every careful motion. One of the carvers murmurs softly as he works. Perhaps a chant, perhaps a recipe, hard to tell. It doesn't matter. The canoe listens either way. A boy arrives with a bundle of freshly cut palm leaves, setting them beside the canoe like offerings. These will be used later to line the base during oiling, keeping the wood from drying too fast in the sun. Nothing is rushed. Drying too quickly can lead to cracks. A good canoe is patient, and so must be its makers. A woman appears next to you, carrying a small bowl. She kneels and offers it without a word. You peer inside. Mashed breadfruit with a swirl of coconut milk, topped with a sliver of taro. It smells faintly sweet, earthy. You accept it gratefully and eat in slow spoonfuls, the warmth grounding you in the moment. Nearby, laughter drifts. Between palm trunks as a few children chase each other with woven fans, pretending to be wind gods. Suddenly a voice calls out, a soft but distinct tone, the kind that quiets a group instantly. Everyone turns. One of the elders has spotted something. In the grain, a knot, right where the prow would later curve. It's not large, but it could be a problem. A small flaw in the wrong place could weaken the structure. The elder touches it with 2 fingers and exhales. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. In some traditions, builders believed that imperfections in the wood reflected a spirit's will, not always to be corrected, but to be worked with. The phrase, "listen to the tree," wasn't just poetic advice. It was practical. The tree tells you what it can become. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it. After a few minutes of murmured discussion, they decide on a solution. The prow will shift slightly, curving tighter than planned, turning the knot into a feature rather than a flaw. A little improvisation, a little respect. You feel a strange pride at having witnessed that moment. Silent consensus, graceful adaptation. The carvers begin again, blades tracing the new arc. The canoe adjusts, changes, becomes. Later you notice a young girl sitting cross-legged beside the canoe, a bit removed from the work. She holds a long, thin stick and uses it to draw in the dirt, shapes and spirals, tiny fish, wavy lines. You recognize the Mehen coil from Egyptian nights. She smiles when she catches you watching. "I'm carving a voyage," she says. "Where we'll go when it's ready." You nod, kneeling beside her, adding a few more squiggles. Maybe a turtle. Maybe a wave. The sand doesn't judge your artistry. It just holds the shapes. A breeze rustles through the trees, and above the sky has brightened to a full cobalt blue, flecked with drifting clouds. The smell of oil now joins the air. Fresh coconut, warming in a shallow bowl. One of the women begins to ladle it gently onto the interior hull of the canoe. With a wad of woven fiber, she spreads it slowly, letting it soak into the wood. This process will be repeated many times over the coming days, sealing the grain, protecting the vessel, deepening its color. You lean closer to watch as the wood darkens beneath the oil, rich brown, nearly golden. It glows as if coming alive. The woman pauses to press her palm against the wet surface. "Soft now," she says, "soon strong." A historical debate floats into your thoughts, gentle as the breeze. Some scholars argue that canoe oiling was purely practical. Others claim it held ceremonial meaning, a kind of baptism, a blessing, a way of ensuring that the spirit of the tree was welcomed into its new form. As always, truth probably lies in both, practicality with a heart of poetry. As the sun slides downward again, the canoe is covered with woven cloth to rest. The tools are placed in a neat row. One carver dips his blade in a bowl of water and wipes it clean with a leaf. Another sharpens hers briefly on a smooth stone, humming the whole time. You help carry the leftover food bowls back toward the central. Fire! The smell of smoke now thickened with roasting taro and charred banana. It's dinner time, though no one really says so. Meals happen here like the tide, predictable, gentle, and shared. As you sit by the fire, legs folded beneath you, someone offers a story. Not a grand myth, but a memory of a storm once weathered in a canoe, of a fish caught bigger than a child, of laughter and spilled water, and the taste of salt. The others add to it, one thread at a time, until the story becomes a kind of canoe itself, holding them all together, afloat in the darkening evening. You close your eyes briefly, lulled by the rise and fall of these quiet tales. The fire pops gently. The wind leans into the trees, and somewhere behind you, beneath its blanket of palm cloth, the canoe sleeps. The morning hums into existence slowly, like a low note held beneath the canopy of swaying trees. You wake to soft light filtering through palm fronds, the scent of damp wood still lingering in the air. Nearby, the ocean exhales quietly onto the sand, whispering that the tide has turned. You sit up, limbs loose and pleasantly sore from yesterday's crouching and carrying. The canoe is waiting, still under its cloth, still sleeping. But not for much longer. The village has already begun to stir. The sound of pestles grinding taro roots and the occasional snap of palm leaves being trimmed floats through the air. Someone sharpens a tool. You hear the rhythmic rasp of stone meeting steel, slow and unhurried, like someone drawing a long breath. It's going to be a shaping day again, but this time the focus shifts to the outrigger. Yes, even a beautiful, streamlined canoe can tip over if it doesn't have balance. The outrigger, called an ama in many parts of Polynesia, is the canoe's partner, a slender, often curved log that rides the water parallel to the hull, tethered by two crossbeams. Without it, the canoe dances too wildly. With it, it glides steady, even through a choppy sea. A mainstream historical fact hums gently in your mind. Polynesian double-hulled canoes and outrigger canoes were essential innovations in oceanic navigation. They allowed for incredible voyages across thousands of miles, linking distant islands with astonishing precision. Some historians still argue whether the Polynesians reached South America before Europeans ever did, possibly sharing crops like the sweet potato. Others claim the current carried the crop alone. Either way, the sea remembers. You rise and follow the sound of quiet work to a clearing nearby. There it lies, the tree selected for the outrigger. Much smaller than the canoe, log but no less important. It's already been stripped of its bark and lies resting across two stones. The shape has been roughed in, and today is about smoothing the belly, curving it to match the canoe's rhythm. A carver waves you over and hands you a scraper. You kneel, and the tool fits your palm surprisingly well. You try a few strokes, awkward at first, then smoother. The wood shavings fall like curled ribbons, piling gently at your feet. The sound of scraping joins the morning symphony, rustling leaves, distant waves, birds calling from the trees. Everything in time, everything in place. A woman approaches with a woven tray holding water in coconut shells. You take one gratefully, the coolness seeping into your hands. She gestures toward the canoe still under its cloth. Ama must match the canoe's heart, she says, and you nod solemnly, even if you don't fully understand. Not yet. There's a lull in the scraping work, and the builders begin to hum. Low, wordless, but rhythmic. The melody sounds like it was pulled from the ocean itself, steady, rising, falling. You feel your hand moving in time with it, and before long your mind starts to drift in that peculiar way it does when a task is repetitive but satisfying. You're reminded of a quirky detail. In some traditions, the outrigger was not just a stabilizer. It was a spirit, a guardian. In fact, in certain villages, if a canoe capsized, the first thing done afterward was not repairs, but apologies to the outrigger for not listening well enough. It's not a superstition, exactly. It's a relationship. You treat what keeps you afloat with respect. Later in the day, the two crossbeams are shaped. These will join the ama to the hull. They're cut from hardwood, lighter, flexible, but strong. They must bend, not break. A young man tests each one by leaning his weight on it, bouncing gently like a child testing a bridge. One creaks slightly too much and is set aside. No chances are taken. Every part must trust every other part. You help carry the outrigger to the canoe, still beneath its covering. Slowly, reverently, the cloth is pulled back. The canoe gleams in the sun, oiled and smooth, its shape catching light like a polished shell. The moment is quiet. No one speaks. Then, as if on cue, a child lets out a shout and everyone laughs. The tension released like a bowstring. The joining begins. First, the crossbeams are placed across the hull, resting gently in carved notches. Then the ama is lifted, set into position, on the far side. Binding begins using long braided cords made from coconut fiber, soaked and softened. It's slow work. Each lashing is tight, then tested, then tightened again. One of the elders sings a counting chant to keep the rhythm. You watch the cords twist into patterns, intricate as basket weaving, but stronger, more purposeful. A historical fact threads its way into your thoughts. Coconut fiber cordage was essential not just for canoes, but for all of Polynesian life, used in building houses, crafting tools, even in medical procedures. Some villages held contests for who could braid the strongest rope or the fastest. Some of those ropes still survive today, buried in caves resistant to time. You kneel at one end of the canoe and help loop a cord over the beam. Your hands move slower than the others, but no one minds. They nod encouragement, and a young boy passes you a shell hook to help pull the cord tight. You smile and feel strangely proud when it holds firm. As the final knots are tied, someone produces a clay pot filled with warm coconut oil mixed with crushed turmeric. This is the blessing. One by one, members of the group dip their fingers into the mixture and smear a line across the amma. Some draw patterns, waves, stars, simple spirals. You trace a small canoe shape. The elder beside you chuckles. There, she says, now it knows what it is. As the sun slips toward the horizon, the canoe rests fully formed. Hull, crossbeams, outrigger, all lashed and gleaming. It looks ready to move, even if it doesn't yet. Ready to carry someone, or many someones, or stories, or dreams. Someone lays a woven mat across the inside, not for protection, but as a gesture, a first step, a welcome mat. You sit nearby again, watching as the others begin to prepare the evening meal. The smell of roasting breadfruit rises into the golden sky. A few children begin to build tiny canoes from palm bark, racing them across shallow puddles left from a rain you must have slept through. The laughter echoes off the trees and feels like home, and behind you the canoe waits. The next morning begins even quieter, if such a thing is possible. The sky is just beginning to blush with light, casting soft hues over the horizon, like the world is gently stretching awake. The ocean is glassy and calm, and every footstep on. The path feels like it echoes just a little more than usual. You step softly, instinctively quieter in reverence to the hour, and then you see it. The canoe is no longer under its shelter. It's down by the water now, cradled between two wooden rests like a sleeping animal about to stir. The outrigger glints faintly in the early light, still damp from morning dew. The corded lashings have tightened overnight, shrunk by the cool. Air holding firm like fingers wrapped in trust. You feel a little thrill. Today is testing day. Around you, the village is coming alive in hushed excitement. Children scamper toward the shore, and elders walk a little more briskly, their walking sticks clicking against the stones. Tools are being wrapped, cooking pots covered for later. No one wants to miss this. A mainstream historical fact whispers, in your thoughts, before canoes ever set off across the vast Pacific, they were tested in shallow bays and lagoons. Builders would watch the way a canoe sat in the water, how it moved with the current, how the outrigger responded to shifts in weight. They believed in letting the canoe speak, revealing its spirit before it was trusted with lives and stories. On open seas, you join the group gathering on the beach. Sand squeezes between your toes, cool and soft. The water shimmers like glass polished by sky. A soft breeze drifts in, warm with salt and promise. The canoe waits, nose pointed gently toward the water like it already knows the way. 4 villagers step forward. 2 men, 1 woman, and an elder with a quiet grin. They wear short wraps tied at the waist, their skin oiled and ready for the sea's embrace. Without ceremony, they lift the canoe together and step forward. The launch is slow, reverent. The hull kisses the water, then sighs deeper into it. And the canoe rocks once, twice, then steadies. The outrigger glides beside it like a loyal shadow. A cheer rises from the shore, not loud but warm, like morning bird song. They climb in one by one, settling into place. The woman takes the steering paddle, her back straight, eyes forward. The elder sits in the middle, fingers brushing the side of the canoe as if reacquainting with an old friend. And then they move. The paddles dip, the water parts. The canoe glides. You watch, entranced, as it cuts through the shallows, leaving barely a ripple. The outrigger balances perfectly, no drag, no resistance, just quiet, cooperative flow. Even the birds seem to hush as it passes. A quirky detail surfaces from your memory. In some Polynesian villages, a newly launched canoe was given a temporary name, just for the trial. If the journey went well, the name might be kept. If not, it would be replaced. The name wasn't written or carved. It was whispered to the waves, let loose like a prayer only the ocean would carry. The canoe loops around a small rocky outcrop, then turns smoothly back. As it nears the shore, you catch sight of its wake, curved and elegant like a signature written in foam. The elder raises his hand, not waving exactly, more like blessing the land behind him. A few villagers return the gesture. The canoe eases. Back onto the beach with no ceremony, no splash, just soft sand and even softer smiles. You help lift it once again, your shoulder pressing against warm wood as it's carried to a shaded spot. The first voyage is done. It wasn't long, but that doesn't matter. It moved, it floated, it listened. And now it can be trusted. The rest of the day unfolds like a reward. Children take turns climbing in and pretending to paddle. A group of teens practice balancing while standing, wobbly-legged and laughing, until one of them falls off and makes a dramatic splash. The villagers set up small shelters near the shore and prepare food: roasted fish, sliced papaya, coconut, rice wrapped in banana leaves. You sit under a palm, sipping cool water from a cup made of folded leaves, watching as the canoe becomes part of the landscape. No longer new, just present. A piece of the village. It fits, like it was always here, simply waiting to be noticed. Historians still argue whether Polynesian canoe testing involved ritual or was purely practical. Some believe each launch was blessed by chants and flowers. Others suggest it was quiet, respectful, and unspoken. The truth might be both, or somewhere in between, like most things in history. As the sun drops lower, casting gold across the waves, a new sound begins, a drum. Soft at first, then joined by a conch shell's long, echoing call. The villagers gather again, forming a wide half-circle on the beach. You join them, feeling the warmth of bodies close by, the hush of anticipation. The elder steps forward again and touches the canoe. He speaks, not loudly but clearly. You catch only pieces of the language, but the meaning reaches you anyway. He speaks of journeys, of safety, of ancestors and stars, of the water's patience and the sky's generosity. He finishes by patting the canoe twice, then stepping back. Someone hands you a flower, white and fragrant, and gestures toward the water. You understand. You walk slowly to the edge, kneel, and release the blossom. It floats, spinning gently, caught by a current so subtle it's almost imagined. The villagers nod, approval given, blessing made. Later, as twilight returns and shadows stretch long, you help cover the canoe again. This time it's more than wood and cord and effort. It's a companion, a quiet presence, a future waiting for motion. You walk back through the trees toward your mat. Crickets begin their song. A child calls for their mother, and somewhere a fire is started for tea. The ocean still murmurs, endlessly steady, and the canoe rests. By the time the next morning arrives, the canoe's trial has already settled into local legend. People speak of its glide with approving nods, as though it's an elder in its own right now. Your muscles are a little sore from helping lift it, but there's a pleasantness to that ache, the kind that comes from being part of something even briefly. You stretch beneath a rising sun, filtered through swaying leaves, the air warm with early light, and the smell of the sea still clinging to everything. Today you learn about adornment, not decoration really. That's too light a word. What happens next is more like respect given shape. The canoe lies under its shelter again, but not idle. Around it gather craftspeople and carvers, quiet in their focus, their hands already busy. You approach and sit nearby, watching as one man carefully draws a line along the prow with a piece of black charcoal. He's not guessing. His fingers move like they remember the path by heart. It's not just art, it's ancestry. Mainstream historical records describe this stage with admiration. Carvings along the bow and stern weren't just flair, they often served as marks of origin, clan or the canoe's spiritual protector. Some represented family symbols, others celestial patterns used in navigation. Each curve told a story, each notch a memory. You inch closer and notice the tools in use, simple yet elegant. Carving blades made from sharpened bone or volcanic. Glass, polished smooth from years of gripping. A wooden mallet lies nearby, wrapped in woven fiber to soften the noise. It barely makes a sound, as if the canoe demands silence while its spirit is etched. Nearby, a woman prepares pigments. She works with natural materials, ashes for black, ochre for red, crushed coral for white. She grinds them on a flat stone, mixing each color with coconut oil until the paste glows gently in its bowl. She stirs slowly, like she's blending. More than color, like memory, pride, and blessing swirl in that mixture too. One craftsman hums as he carves. You recognize the melody from the trial day. Soft, steady, like the tide. He speaks only once, pointing to a shape he's carving near. The outrigger strut. It looks like a bird mid-flight, wings curled upward. Heron, he murmurs, guide of still waters. You nod, though you're not sure if he's naming the carving, the canoe, or something even older. A fringe belief flickers in your thoughts. Some Polynesian groups believed the carvings had to be coaxed from the wood, not forced. That the canoe already knew what it wanted to become, and the carver's job was just to listen long enough. Some say this is why carvings never look rushed. They emerge slowly, thoughtfully, like a story being remembered. Later in the day, painting begins. The woman daubs her finger in red and gently smears a line beneath the prow carving. Her face is serene, but there's a focus in her touch. This isn't aesthetic, it's reverence. The red becomes a stripe, the stripe a symbol, and the symbol a mark of protection, a talisman in pigment. The stern receives a different treatment, white patterns brushed like gentle waves across its edge. Some of the villagers join in, pressing fingerprints along the rim. You're invited too. You dip your finger in black and press it to the side of the outrigger beam. One small dot, barely noticeable, but now a permanent part of the story. You feel oddly honored. A child runs up with a bundle of dried pandanus leaves and offers them to the decorators. They nod and begin weaving them into a small braid, which they tie around the front of the canoe, right where the carved bird begins its flight. It flutters faintly in the wind, its edges catching sunlight like it's smiling. Historians still argue whether these decorations held consistent meaning across islands or evolved uniquely in each village. Some motifs recur, spirals, birds, waves, but their interpretations vary. Protection on the sea, tribute to the stars. A joke from a long-gone ancestor, immortalized in wood. Who knows? The ambiguity is part of the magic. You help where you can, holding bowls, passing cloths, steadying the outrigger as pigments dry. It feels like being in a kitchen during a big family meal. Quiet chaos, purposeful hands, the sense that something important is happening even if no one stops to explain it. As the sun climbs higher, the canoe begins to gleam. Its sides shimmer, faintly from the oil rubbed in to protect the wood, and the pigments glow gently against the grain. It looks less like a vessel and more like a spell, summoned slowly over days with carving, song, color, and patience. Someone brings coconut water. You sit in the shade with the decorators, sipping in silence. The canoe rests nearby, radiant and still, like a sleeping dragon. Then someone chuckles. A small dog, probably more fluff than menace, has crept under the outrigger and fallen asleep. No one shoos it away. Instead, they drape a bit of cloth over it and return to their work. You glance at the canoe's prow again. The bird seems to gleam now, its head angled just slightly upward, ready. You think of how this canoe will carry people across vast waters, face storms and stars and still hold their trust, and you think about what you've helped with, not just a build, but a ritual, a rite of passage, a transformation from tree to traveler. When the decorators finally stop, the light is beginning to slant golden. The canoe now wears its marks proudly. It doesn't look new, it looks born, ancient and brand new all at once. The villagers admire it quietly. No speeches, no fanfare, just a collective breath, deep and satisfied. You sit with them a little longer, watching shadows stretch, the tide rise gently, the canoe glowing in the dusk like a promise. The sun rises lazily the next morning, casting soft golden light across the now adorned canoe. You stir under your woven mat shelter, the salty air carrying the scent of roasted breadfruit and fresh seaweed. The village is already humming with motion, and when you join the others near the shoreline, it's clear that today is another step in the canoe's journey. Today, it gets a name. In many cultures, names are casual things, a label, a sound. But here in this Polynesian village, a name is more than that, it's a soul. It's the breath the canoe will carry through storms and calm, the spirit that gives it purpose beyond just floating on water. And so, the naming is not hurried. The canoe rests at the water's edge again, its decorated sides catching early sunlight, its silhouette elegant and strong. Around it, the villagers gather, dressed not in ceremony robes or painted masks, but in the soft, humble garments of everyday life. That's the style here. Important things are done with care, but not with spectacle. A flower tucked behind the ear, a necklace of dried shells, a bracelet of braided grass. That's all the ritual you need. A quiet elder steps forward. You've seen him before, always just at the edges of activity, watching, humming, sometimes chuckling to himself. He approaches the canoe slowly and kneels beside it, his hand resting on the smooth wood near the prow. He closes his eyes and begins to speak. Not loudly, not like an announcer, but softly, as if telling the canoe a secret. The name he gives is lyrical, 2 long syllables followed by a softer third. It means little horizon, someone whispers, to you. Because she always brings us home. It's perfect. The canoe isn't grand or flashy, but steady, patient, beautiful in a quiet way. Little horizon feels like a promise, like hope whispered across the sea. A mainstream historical fact ripples through your thoughts. Polynesian canoe naming traditions varied by island and lineage, but always centered around guidance and guardianship. Names often reference stars, birds, ancestors, or moments of deep meaning, sometimes even dreams. They were less about ego, more about continuity. Not who built the canoe, but who would trust it next. After the name is given, A-E-E-E, bowl of water, gathered at dawn from where the waves kiss the reef, is sprinkled gently over the canoe's prow. Not poured, just misted, like blessing it with dew. Some villagers touch the water and then their foreheads. Others whisper their own quiet greetings to the canoe, a fringe tidbit you overhear during the ceremony. On some islands, builders would sleep beside the canoe for several nights after naming it, believing that dreams shared in this way would bind the spirit of the craft and its maker. She must know your fears, one carver once said, so she can carry them for you. After the blessing, a light breakfast is shared. People lounge nearby on mats, slicing papaya and sipping tea brewed with lemongrass and coconut husk. The conversation is light, dotted with laughter. You join them, tasting the sweetness of the fruit and watching the canoe, which now seems more alive than ever. Then comes the first real journey, not across vast seas just yet, but a quiet trip along the reef. This part is known as learning the breath. The canoe isn't tested for strength anymore. Now it's tested for feeling. A small crew will take it out, paddling slowly, sensing how it moves, how it glides or resists, how it inhales the water and exhales wake. You're invited along. You step in carefully, your weight shifting the balance just slightly. The wood feels warm beneath your feet. You kneel toward the center between paddlers, and as they push off, the canoe sighs into motion. The sea greets you with its usual rhythm, welcoming but not indulgent, like an old friend who makes you work for the best. Stories. The paddles dip and rise, dip and rise. The canoe hums softly beneath you. Not literally, of course, but there's a sound. A vibration that rises up through your knees. You close your eyes for a moment and listen. You feel it respond to each current, each pull, like it's already learning you just as you're learning it. A woman near the stern murmurs, "She dances well." Everyone nods, pleased. The elder who named her closes his eyes and smiles. He's not paddling. Just riding along, hands in his lap, like a passenger with full trust. Historians still argue whether these early canoe voyages were purely functional or sacred rehearsals for future journeys. Some records describe chants and songs sung to guide the canoe across invisible lines between islands. Others focus on the quiet, the listening phase, the communion. Perhaps both are true. You pass the reef's edge slowly, where the shallows give way to deep blue. The water here darkens like ink, and the waves change their pattern. But Little Horizon doesn't flinch. She floats steady, her newly named spirit rising to meet the sea's deeper breath. Then, almost as soon as it began, the journey turns. The paddlers loop the canoe gently and head back, their movements smooth and efficient. No hurry, just presence. When you reach shore again, someone taps the hull twice with a wooden stick, a tradition, a thank you. The crew steps out one by one, murmuring quietly to each other about how she moved, where she leaned, how her spine felt in the wind. These are not complaints, these are observations, like gardeners discussing how a vine climbs or how a certain fruit sweetens under cloud cover. You step out last, water cool against your ankles, and turn to look at her once more. Little Horizon, still simple, still beautiful, but now something more. She's not just wood and fiber anymore, she's story. You dry your feet and help pull her slightly farther up the shore. Not all the way, just enough to rest. She's earned that. Later, as the sun begins to dip again, you find yourself tracing her name in the sand just once. It looks like a prayer, or maybe just a thank you. You wake the next morning to the gentle clatter of tools being arranged and the low thrum of voices preparing for another day's work. The canoe rests quietly nearby, shaded by coconut palms, its newly named hull cool in the morning light. But today is not about carving or smoothing. Today is about building the outrigger, the balance, the wing, the part of the canoe that gives it grace over distance and stability over swell. You stretch, brush a few sand grains from your ankle, and wander toward the activity. A group has already begun laying out long, curved branches of ironwood and breadfruit tree, sorting through them like puzzle pieces. This is the art of choosing, not just for size or shape, but for character. Each piece has to match the canoe's movement, complement its energy. You overhear one carver say softly, "She won't like a partner that fights her stride." The others nod. They know. An outrigger, if you've never seen one, looks like a floating extension, like a thin second canoe riding beside the main hull, connected by sturdy arms called iako. But don't let the simplicity fool you. The outrigger is what lets a canoe dance across open ocean without capsizing, adjusting to the chop and lean of the sea like a well-trained partner. Without it, balance becomes a gamble. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your thoughts. Polynesian outrigger designs are among the most sophisticated in ancient maritime engineering. Early explorers were stunned by how far these vessels could travel, sometimes over 2,000 miles across open water, thanks to this elegant stabilizer. The design spread across the Pacific, evolving as it went, but always holding that central truth: movement with balance. As the chosen pieces are cleaned and shaped, another rhythm takes over: the lashings. You sit and watch as long strands of coconut fiber, called sennet, are soaked, stretched, and prepared. Sennet isn't just rope, it's story. Each fiber is stripped, dried, and braided by hand, passed down through fingers that understand tension and trust. No nails, no glue. Just fiber and friction and centuries of know-how. A fringe detail you hadn't heard before. In some traditions, the strongest lashings came from sennet made during a full moon. Supposedly, the moon's influence made the coconut husks tougher, more resilient. Scientists might roll their eyes, but the old navigators swore by it. Who's to say? The lashing begins. One man holds an iako steady, while another wraps the sennet tightly, knotting it in a complex pattern that feels more like weaving than tying. They work silently, moving with a choreography honed over years. The cord hums faintly as it pulls taut. You help by holding the fiber bowl, occasionally handing over new strands. They nod in thanks, never breaking rhythm. You ask one of them, gently, how they learned this. He grins and shrugs. My grandfather, and his grandfather, and his. He lifts a bundle of senet. This is our hammer and nail. You smile, you get it now. As the morning stretches toward noon, the outrigger takes shape. The arms curve from the canoe like wings, connecting to the smaller float which is lighter and thinner, designed to skim the water without resistance. When it's all lashed together, the canoe no longer looks like a solo vessel. She's joined, balanced, whole. Historians still argue whether the outrigger was a purely functional innovation or had spiritual connotations, representing the duality of human life or the balance between land and sea, sky and earth. Some old chants even refer to the canoe and outrigger as siblings, one bold, one steady. You like that idea? Every adventurer needs someone to lean on. After the final lash is tested, plucked like a string to hear its pitch, the builders sit back and admire their work. Someone drapes a garland of red hibiscus flowers along the float. Not necessary, but beautiful. A quiet celebration. No speeches. Just pride, resting in shared silence. Then lunch. The work pauses. Baskets appear, filled with taro and grilled fish, wrapped in banana leaves. You eat slowly beside the canoe, your hands sticky with roasted breadfruit, your eyes occasionally drifting to the lashing knots, now glistening faintly in the midday sun. Later, the canoe is pushed into the water again, this time with her outrigger. She glides differently now, more certain, more sure. You walk along the beach as others paddle out, watching her long shape skim across the lagoon like a silver fish. One child, no more than 6, runs alongside and shouts, "She flies now!" And truly, it feels like flight. Not speed, but ease. The kind of flight that stays close to the sea's skin, that sings with the wind and rests with the current. The paddlers turn and wave. You wave back. The canoe dips slightly, and the outrigger steadies her. No drama, just partnership. Balance once again. As evening returns, the canoe is tied off to a driftwood post, bobbing gently at the edge of the village. The tide slides around her like a whisper. She looks content, almost smug, as if she's been waiting for this all along. You rest nearby, legs stretched out, head tilted back toward the gathering stars. The lashing knots, the curved arms, the tiny float, all of it tells a story now. One of craft and care, of patience and play, of humans who understood how to travel, not by overpowering the sea, but by listening to it. You close your eyes and hear it again. The soft clink of tools, the creak of wood, the murmur of waves tugging against a perfectly balanced hull. It's music now, the lullaby of labor well done. You wake to a world thick with anticipation. The morning sky is pale and still, like a canvas waiting for brushstrokes. The canoe lies waiting, tethered gently at the shoreline, her hull gleaming faintly from yesterday's oil rub, her outrigger, resting like a second breath. Today is no ordinary day, it's the first test. The whole village seems to move with quiet intention. No rushing, no noise, just a steady energy, as if everyone knows their role without needing to be told. You're handed a bundle of folded cloth, simple garments suited for paddling. You change beside a stand of trees, the breeze brushing against your skin, cooling the warmth left by the rising sun. Back at the water's edge, a small group gathers. Not too many, just enough. The chosen crew, 3 elders, 2 young men, and you. Each wears a sash of indigo or russet around their waist, symbols of role or experience. No words are exchanged about the journey ahead. This isn't a ceremony of fanfare. It's a quiet rite, a whisper of tradition passed between generations without need for speech. The canoe is eased into the water with practiced grace. Feet press into wet sand. Hands steady her sides. The float skims the surface, barely touching it. You climb in last, heart fluttering as your weight settles into the vessel. It rocks slightly, just once, then finds its rhythm. The others nod in approval. You're part of the balance now. Your paddle is smooth and worn, carved from breadfruit wood, its handle polished by countless hands. You dip it into the water on command, following the lead paddler's stroke. Left, right, left, right. It's a rhythm easy to fall into, like breathing, like sleepwalking through moonlight. A mainstream historical fact murmurs to the surface of your mind. Polynesian paddling techniques were more than physical movement. They were almost spiritual. Navigators learned to listen to the water, feel the current in their bones, and use the shape of waves as language. Some chants describe entire journeys using only ocean rhythm and wind scent. A child shouts from the shore. You glance back, see a group waving. The village recedes slowly, palm trees shrinking into silhouettes against the sand. The outrigger rises slightly as a small swell rolls beneath. No panic. She holds steady. You paddle, you float, you feel. Further. Out, the lagoon deepens into a richer blue. Fish dart beneath the hull, flashes of silver and orange like living confetti. A turtle glides near, matching your pace for a moment before dipping below. You smile. It feels like a blessing. The paddler in front of you begins to hum. A low, even melody, wordless. The others join, layering tones like woven mats. You hum too, tentatively, your voice wrapping into theirs. The canoe seems to respond, each stroke landing cleaner, each glide more graceful. It's not a race, not even a goal, just motion for its own sake. A quirky tidbit rises into view like driftwood on calm seas. Some Polynesian elders believed that singing to your canoe kept its spirit content, ensuring smoother travel. The tune didn't have to be beautiful, only honest. The canoe, like the sea, respected sincerity above all. The hum quiets. A breeze picks up. You shift your weight subtly, adjusting as the outrigger dips and lifts. It's like riding an animal, one that doesn't gallop but glides. The sun creeps higher, drawing diamonds across the water's surface. No one speaks, no one needs to. You glance at the lead paddler. His eyes are closed, head tilted back, face to the sky. He paddles with instinct. You wonder how many times he's done this, hundreds, thousands. He could probably navigate blindfolded. Historians still argue whether these early sea trials were practical tests or ceremonial ones. Was it about proving the canoe's balance or the paddler's? Did the journey confirm engineering success or spiritual alignment? Maybe both. Maybe the sea didn't care why you came, only how you moved upon her. Eventually the canoe drifts to a stop. No one says it. It just happens. Paddles lift in unison, water streaming off their blades like tiny waterfalls. The canoe rests, bobbing softly, her journey acknowledged. This was enough. You sit in stillness, surrounded by water and quiet. The canoe creaks faintly. A seabird calls overhead. Beneath, the sea rocks you gently. There is no land in sight for a moment, only horizon. Then, slowly, you turn back. The paddling home feels lighter. Your muscles have learned the movement. Your balance has become part of the vessels. The canoe no longer feels like something you entered. She feels like something you joined. Closer to shore, the village begins to reappear. First, the treetops, then the rooftops, then the familiar rhythm of people moving with purpose. A conch sounds, not loud, just enough to mark the return. Children run to the edge, cheering, splashing water with their feet. You grin. Back on land, the canoe is lifted. Again, not by one, but by many. Hands reach out. She rises above the water, dripping, proud, sacred. Laid gently beneath a palm, she glistens like a creature returned from dream. You help wash the paddles, rinse the hull, coil the sennit ropes with care. No rush, just reverence. Later, as the sun lowers, the canoe rests beneath a shade awning. People gather around her, bringing offerings, flowers, songs, even a tiny carved fish placed gently on her bow. No big speech, just gratitude. You lean against a tree, tired in the best way. A kind of fullness hums in your chest, like a bowl filled to the brim. You didn't just paddle a canoe, you became part of its story. The paddler, with closed eyes earlier, walks past and pats your shoulder. You're balanced, he says, just that. Then he walks on and you believe him. The sun dips lower now, casting long shadows across the beach as you watch the last of the palm fronds sway in the salt-touched wind. You sit in the sand beside the canoe, still barefoot from the paddle. The warmth of the day clings gently to the ground beneath you, while the breeze carries the first cool hints of evening across your shoulders. The water nearby laps softly, as if the sea herself is murmuring a lullaby just for you. Your eyes follow the lines of the canoe once more. How? The hull curves like a smile into the shoreline. How the outrigger floats just beyond the water's reach. Someone has tied a woven garland of hibiscus flowers to its stern, a small nod of affection, or perhaps a blessing for the journey ahead. It's all so quiet, so simple, and yet it hums with something deeper. Not far from you, a few villagers have begun gathering long wooden poles and flat stones, preparing for the next task in the canoe's life cycle, marking its first passage. This isn't a ceremony for crowds or speeches, but a ritual all the same. A moment to tell the canoe that it now belongs, that it carries the village's spirit within it, and that its memory is now their memory too. You're invited to help. Gather stones from a shallow inlet just down the shore. The stones must be flat, smooth and pale, perfect for balancing along the canoe's edge in a quiet act of symmetry. The villagers believe these stones help anchor not just the canoe's center of gravity, but its presence in the world, a symbolic weight, something solid to remind the water of the craft's intention. You wade ankle deep into the water, searching, by touch. The stones are cool and rounded, their surfaces worn gentle by the tide. You select 5 and carry them carefully back in your arms like sacred tools. One of the elders gives a small, approving nod. You've chosen well. A mainstream historical fact hums in your mind as you walk. In many Polynesian cultures, rituals involving stone or shell marked the beginning and end of a canoe's usefulness. Stones placed at the keel or tied beneath the bow often represented spiritual anchors, gifts to sea spirits, or symbols of the canoe's identity as something more than wood. You place your stones evenly along the gunwale, each one a quiet offering. There is no chant, no grand gesture, just the soft clink of stone meeting wood and a shared silence that speaks volumes. Nearby, a child balances her own tiny rock on the outrigger float. She grins at you, eyes wide with concentration, then whispers, "This one's for luck." You smile, resisting the urge to overthink it. Maybe it is. A quirky little detail surfaces from somewhere in your half-dozing thoughts. Some island legends claimed the first canoe was born from a giant seashell, cracked open by a thunder god, and shaped by moonlight. Whether that's myth or metaphor, no one argues. The canoe has always had a little magic in it. After the stones are placed, the group sits back on the beach, forming a loose semicircle. Someone brings out a flute, fashioned from bamboo and bound with coconut fiber. The sound it makes is thin, soft, almost fragile, but beautiful in its simplicity. You close your eyes and let the melody drift over you, mingling with the breeze and the distant cries of seabirds. One elder begins to speak, not in a booming voice, but a murmuring cadence that feels like a tide coming in. He tells the canoe's story. Not just the crafting of it, but its purpose, its spirit, and the names of those who shaped it. He names you too, quietly, as one of the hands that helped bring it to life. You feel your chest warm with something more than pride. It's belonging. Historians still argue whether these storytelling circles were a formal tradition or something more fluid, whether they carried genealogies, fishing knowledge, or served simply to tie people together in moments like this. You're inclined to think it's all of the above, and none, and something in between. As the story winds down, a woven basket is passed around. It holds dried banana chips, slices of coconut, and bits of smoked fish. You take your share with grateful fingers, chewing slowly as the fire is lit. It's small, just enough to glow, not enough to burn. Flames flicker up in soft golden waves, reflecting in the lacquered hull of the canoe. You listen as one of the younger villagers talks softly about the next voyage. Nothing epic, just a short paddle around the reef at sunrise. But even that holds meaning. Each journey, no matter how small, binds the canoe to the sea, like a signature on the first page of a story. And just when you think it's over, one final surprise. The elder who led the ceremony stands and carefully lifts a cloth bundle. He unwraps it to reveal a carved wooden emblem, a stylized turtle, its shell patterned with lines representing wind and wave. "For the bow," he says, "to mark this canoe as one of ours." He places it gently at the front of the vessel, where it will be lashed tomorrow. It's beautiful. Not just the carving, but the gesture. You realize this canoe is no longer just an object. It's a name, a memory, a vessel in every sense. As the fire burns lower and the flute plays again, this time a lullaby, you lie back in the sand, the canoe to your right, the sea to your left. Overhead, the stars blink slowly into view. You breathe deep, the scent of salt, smoke, and something ancient filling your lungs, and you think, not for the first time tonight, how beautiful it is that humans take the hardest parts of their world, trees, stone, water, distance, and turn them into stories, into vessels, into things that carry us. The canoe gleams faintly in the firelight, its stones glinting like tiny moons. You watch as one slips slightly, settling deeper into its resting place. And somehow, that feels like a sign. You sigh, eyes closing, head tilting toward the stars. The canoe is ready. The morning returns, slow and golden, spreading soft warmth across your face and drawing you gently from sleep. The fire has long since dwindled to ashes, and the stones you helped place on the canoe now glisten faintly with dew. The breeze carries the earthy scent of the shoreline and the salty promise of the sea, and you rise slowly, blinking against the dawn. Around you, the village begins to stir, quietly, like the island doesn't want to wake anyone too quickly. Today is not a day of labor, not in the traditional sense. Today is a day of learning. You follow a cluster of villagers toward a shaded clearing beyond the canoe house, where the ground has been swept clean and the morning light filters gently through woven palm thatching. Laid out on woven mats are the tools of the past. Stone adzes, coral rasps, drills tipped with bone, and cordage made from twisted hibiscus fiber. They gleam faintly in the slanted sun, not like metal but like memory, like patience. You kneel beside an older man who gestures for you to choose a tool. You pick up a small adze, its handle carved from driftwood, its blade still sharp after who knows how many generations. It's lighter than you expect. He nods. "This one belonged to my grandfather," he says softly, "and probably someone before him." That's the rhythm of the day, stories tied to tools. Every chisel has a voice, every chord a lesson. You run your fingers over the fine fibers of coconut sennet, learning how they were soaked, pounded, twisted, and dried, until they held stronger than rope. Some were used to bind the canoe's seams. Others tied nets, repaired sails, even supported. The rafters above your head now. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. Polynesians mastered not just the art of canoe building, but the technology of cordage to a remarkable degree. Without nails or iron tools, they bound everything, from planks to people, with botanical ingenuity. Some of their knots were so precise they resisted centuries of seawater. And then there's the art of lashing. You watch as two young apprentices demonstrate the sacred triangle lash, their movements swift but smooth like musicians tuning an ancient instrument. The rhythm of wrapping, pulling, tightening, and tying follows a tempo passed down like song. You try it too, guided by careful hands, and fumble your first attempt, but no one laughs. Instead, an elder places your hand on the cord again, more gently this time, and says, "Breathe with it." You do. And it works. Sort of. A quirky tidbit bubbles up. Some Polynesian myths claim the gods themselves taught the first lashings to mortals using the tails of sea creatures. Eels, octopuses, manta rays, all imagined as tutors of technique. One story even says that Maui the trickster lashed the sky to the earth for a while just to shorten the day. It didn't last long, but people remembered the knots. You sit quietly, trying again, the cord slipping through your fingers like water. It's humbling and peaceful. No one rushes you. In this clearing, time behaves differently. There's no urgency, just quiet repetition. One wrap, one pull, one knot. Try again. Next comes the shaping of a paddle. The blade is already roughed out from breadfruit wood, but it needs smoothing, patient, thoughtful smoothing. You're handed a chunk of coral fitted to a wooden grip and shown how to sand along the grain. Not across, never across. That way lies splinters, that way lies bad journeys. You begin to scrape. Slowly, it's work but not effort. The texture of coral against wood becomes hypnotic. You imagine generations of hands doing the same, shaping, sanding, singing. Historians still argue whether these tools, these rituals, were solely practical or part of a broader cultural coding system, a way of embedding meaning in material. Were certain knots reserved for chiefs? Did specific adzes pass only through certain bloodlines? The answers vary by island, by era, by elder. Your paddle takes shape by inches. A young girl beside you carves a small turtle into hers, not a big one, just a gentle flourish near the base where fingers will curl around it with every stroke. She smiles at you, shrugging. "So the sea knows me," she whispers. You admire the idea. The sea, after all, has always known more than it says. Later, someone brings water and a bundle of pandanus leaves tied with twine. Inside, cooled sweet potato, coconut slices, and something tangy and pickled you can't name. You eat slowly, savoring each bite under the thatched roof, while tools glint softly around you like relics on a museum floor. Except nothing here is dusty or forgotten. These tools live, they move, they still matter. You return to the canoe just before midday, the sun peeking through clouds and making the whole hull shimmer slightly with reflected light. The stones remain where you placed them. The little jackal peg is still tucked into your satchel. A cat curls beneath the outrigger, tail twitching lazily. You sit again in the sand, paddle across your lap, hands sticky from coconut oil and memory. Someone's begun humming, not a song. You know, but something circular, like waves returning to shore. The canoe waits, the sea waits, but not impatiently. And you breathe. The afternoon unfolds like a warm woven mat, soft, steady, and sun-dappled. You stay close to the canoe, but now your gaze follows others as they pass through the village, preparing something you can't quite name yet. There's a quiet, but purposeful movement to it all. People carrying bundles, sorting shells, unrolling fabrics dyed with hibiscus and turmeric. Someone is slicing taro. Someone else is chanting softly to themselves, rhythmic and low, like an incantation meant more for the wind than for you. You're drawn to it, this rhythm of intent. It doesn't feel like preparation for a festival or celebration, at least not the loud firework-filled ones, you know. It feels deeper, sleepier, quieter, something slow and sacred, rooted in knowing when not to rush. You follow the sounds to a clearing shaded by breadfruit trees. There at the center sits a woman surrounded by bowls, some filled with bright flower petals, others with dark, oiled stones, and one that smells unmistakably of fermenting fruit. Her fingers move with the confidence of long memory. She looks up and nods toward the ground beside her. You sit naturally. This is part of it too. Canoe making is more than carving. It's more than lashing. It's more than any single act. It's a tapestry, and here's another thread, ritual. She scoops petals and sprinkles them over a folded cloth, humming softly. The scent of ilang-ilang and crushed guava leaves hangs in the air. She hands you a small square of bark cloth, then begins to show you how to press it, fold it, knot it into something that's both offering and ornament. Each fold is paired with a story, a name, a meaning. A mainstream historical fact comes quietly to mind. Polynesian rituals surrounding canoe launches were among the most complex of pre-modern maritime traditions. They blended chants, dances, flower garlands, feasting, and offerings to sea spirits. These weren't mere superstitions. They were acknowledgements, contracts even, with the ocean, asking permission to travel through its realm safely. And just like everything else here, even those rituals were shared, not lectured. You're not told what each fold means. You feel sight when you finish your first flower wrap. It looks slightly wonky. But she beams anyway, taking it gently and placing it in a bowl with the others. No two oceans are the same, she murmurs. No two folds are wrong. You help grind a few more ingredients, nuts and roots and dried petals, into a thick paste that smells like sweetened earth. It's not food, it's paint, or rather, dye. Another villager appears with a sheet of tapa cloth stretched between, two poles already covered in soft markings. You watch as others join in, dipping fingers into bowls and tracing shapes, waves, birds, canoes, wind spirals, across the surface. You're handed a brush. It's made of coconut husk bound with shell and twine. You dip, you pause, and then you begin. A gentle arch here, a curl there. You're not an artist, not really. But the movement is slow. Forgiving. It invites mistakes the way the sea invites waves. A quirky tidbit floats up. In some island groups, tapa cloth art was used to communicate journeys, like a soft-inked map. Certain folds and marks indicated the direction of prevailing winds or the landmarks seen from certain canoe paths. Whether these were purely symbolic or fully navigational is, as always, up for debate. But this cloth. This one seems more emotional than practical, like a dream remembered in strokes. As the cloth dries, someone begins to drum. Not loudly, just a heartbeat rhythm coaxed from a hollowed log. Then another joins, higher pitched. Then voices, untrained but warm, humming together. The clearing fills not with performance but with presence. Historians still argue whether these chants and dances were standardized ritual or spontaneous celebration. Some think they were inherited and precise, with designated lines for every stage of boat building. Others suggest they evolved, born fresh each time, shaped by who was there and how the day felt. You prefer the second theory. It feels truer to this afternoon. The canoe is brought closer now, resting on its supports but more alive than before. Its body gleams with fresh oil, seams dark with polished lashing. You hadn't noticed how much progress had been made. When did that happen? Someone begins placing the painted cloths into the hull, lining it, not for padding but perhaps for memory. Each one seems to tell a different story. You recognize a flower fold here, a swirl of dye you brushed there. Somehow, even your smallest acts have been woven into this vessel. A woman approaches with a small tray holding a carved shell, a feather, and something wrapped in leaf. She lays them into a wooden bowl and places it at the bow. An offering, you realize. You don't ask to whom. It doesn't seem to matter. The sea, the sky, the ancestors, maybe all. You're invited to touch the hull, palm flat, breath soft. It's warm from the sun, smooth. Not just a boat now, not even just a canoe, something more. A bridge maybe between here and elsewhere, between now and always. Someone wraps your wrist with a braided cord of coconut fiber. It smells faintly, of smoke and salt. You're told it's a blessing for the journey, not for travel necessarily, but for what's ahead. The canoe, someone says gently, moves even when it rests. You look back toward the horizon. The water winks with late sunlight, the sky beginning its slow transition into purple, and somewhere deep inside you feel it, not movement, but readiness. The sun settles lower now, slipping behind the palms like a tired storyteller retreating from the fire. Shadows stretch across the village floor, soft and long, but the work, if you can even call it that, doesn't stop. It simply changes rhythm. You follow the slow procession toward the water's edge. The nearly finished canoe is gently lifted, not by strength alone, but by harmony. Dozens of hands supporting it, each move practiced but unhurried. No one shouts, no one commands. Each step forward is more like a breath shared among many. You walk beside them, your feet matching the cadence of the group. Someone hums again, maybe the same song from earlier, maybe not, but it carries. The melody is worn smooth like river stones, its words blending with the rustle of palm leaves and the faint hush of distant waves. As they approach the shore, mats are laid down. The canoe is gently placed upon them, its belly cushioned by woven reed and dried fronds. You watch as two elders step forward, each holding a small bowl. One dips fingers in, then brushes a mixture of ash and coconut oil along the side of the hull. The other traces a spiral pattern on the bow, whispering something into the breeze. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Some Polynesian communities performed a rite called tauma faiga, a sacred blessing of new canoes involving chants, symbolic washing, and sometimes even the placing of spirit stones or protective charms in hidden compartments within the vessel. The idea was clear. If a canoe would carry lives, it had to be alive too. Cared for, acknowledged, and asked permission. Tonight's ritual feels similar, not because of theatrics, but because of intention. Every movement says, "We see you, we thank you, carry us well." You are handed something light, a small garland of woven ti leaves. No grand meaning is given, just a gesture. You drape it over the side of the canoe, mirroring others. One person adds a feather. Another tucks in a sliver of bark. A quirky detail floats to the surface of your memory. In some island lore, a canoe was said to remember all it heard during construction. If the builders argued or cursed, the canoe would carry that unrest with it, making voyages rougher or steering off course. Conversely, laughter and harmony were thought to sweeten the wood, making it more obedient and lucky at sea. If that's true, this canoe is in excellent shape. The villagers now sit in a broad circle, backs straight, faces open to the last light of day. The elder who taught you the flower wrap stands slowly, holding a hollowed shell filled with seawater and petals. She speaks, not loudly, but with a clarity that cuts through even the whispering tide. The language flows past you like music. You don't need translation. You understand anyway, something about thanks, about journeys, about returning even when you don't. She pours a little of the water onto the canoe's bow, then sets the shell down. Another elder rises, lifting a short carved staff and touching its tip to the ground in time with his words. It feels like poetry, or perhaps a blessing disguised as a lullaby. Historians still argue whether these closing rituals were spiritual, theatrical, or social glue. Some suggest they were meant to bind community members into shared accountability for each voyage. Others claim the rites served as reminders that every departure was also a promise to come home. You sit with this for a while, listening as more voices rise. Some chant, some merely hum. One small child stands and shouts something enthusiastically, drawing laughter all around. You smile. Even rituals need comic relief. Eventually, the singing fades. The circle remains. But now, the quiet is different. Not empty, full. Filled with meaning, with connection, with breath. Someone passes you a bowl of something warm. Sweet root mashed with coconut cream. It smells like earth and comfort. You eat slowly, gratefully, letting the flavors soak into your memory. The stars blink open above one by one. They seem brighter near the ocean. Or maybe your eyes have adjusted to noticing again. The canoe gleams softly under the starlight. No paint, no varnish. Just wood, oil, and story. Then something unexpected. A low rhythmic drumming, not planned, not formal. A few people tapping on upturned bowls, logs, their own chests. It begins as a pulse, then grows, slow and steady, like a canoe gliding, forward with each stroke. People sway, some rise, a few begin to dance. You watch as the circle becomes a spiral, people moving inward and outward in slow, graceful motions. Not performance, communion, a language spoken with feet and arms. Some dancers hold long sticks and mimic paddling. Others stretch their arms like wings, evoking seabirds gliding beside a voyage. You're drawn in not to join the dancing, but to witness it fully. You sit upright now, your senses gently sharpened, not with excitement, but with awe. This, too, is part of canoe making, the releasing, the breathing together before the letting go. A young boy sits beside you, holding a half-carved figurine. He offers it to you, unfinished, but full of potential. "You can make it," he says with a shy grin. "Next one, you take it." It's small and unassuming, but lovely in its own way. Another thread added to the weave. As the spiral dance slows and the drumming fades, people begin to lie back onto mats. The air carries the warmth of roasted breadfruit and the faint perfume of frangipani. The waves hush the edges of sound. You lie back too, fingers still gently wrapped around the little carving. You close your eyes, but the images stay. The canoe, the chants, the circles, the quiet rhythm of a people who know how to move slowly together toward meaning. Dawn arrives without drama, just a gentle brightening at the edge of the world. You stir before the sun fully crests the horizon, nudged awake by the hush of waves smoothing the sand just beyond your mat. The air is cool, touched with salt and promise. A rooster calls from somewhere uphill, its voice more suggestion than alarm. You sit up slowly. The canoe lies where it was left, now kissed by the soft light of early morning. Its lines are clearer now, its curves more vivid. Where last night's ritual cloaked it in mystery, today's sun strips everything bare. yet the reverence remains. The canoe is no longer just a project. It's a companion waiting patiently for its first journey. Around you, the village begins to stretch and blink awake. Smoke curls lazily from a few cooking fires. Someone pounds taro in the distance. And by the shore, a small group gathers again, not in ceremony this time, but in quiet readiness. Today, the canoe floats. You wander closer, drawn not by urgency, but by inevitability. The elder with the flower wraps greets you with a glance, and a small bundle of banana leaves. Inside, a bit of mashed fruit, something sticky sweet, and a piece of roasted fish. Breakfast, island style. You eat it by the canoe's side, watching as children dart back and forth delivering ropes padding, even a paddle longer than you are tall. One of them places a necklace of shells over the canoe's prow. Not for good luck, you're told. Just because it's beautiful. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Some Polynesian cultures adorned canoes with symbolic elements, feathers, shells, painted motifs, not for decoration alone, but as identity markers. In large voyages, each canoe had a personality, a lineage, even a spirit name. Names were whispered to the sea, not shouted. You hear such a name now, muttered by an old man crouched near the canoe's rear. He pats the hull twice, says a word, like Moana Iki, then smiles to himself, satisfied. You don't ask the meaning. It feels private. Nearby, the young boy who gave you the carving is helping secure outriggers, those long wooden arms that stretch out from the canoe's side. Like balancing wings, they're essential for ocean stability, especially when waves are less than friendly. You watch as he ties knots quickly, efficiently. There's pride in the way he double-checks each one. A quirky tidbit floats up. Some ancient sailors believed that badly tied knots could confuse the canoe's spirit, making it hesitant or clumsy in the waves. Others believed a single knot, tied backward, hidden beneath the paddle seat, could trap good wind inside for emergencies. Whether superstition or just clever contingency planning, it worked well enough to be passed down. As the final preparations wind down, you're invited to help push. The canoe, now fully equipped and beautifully silent, is lifted slightly and guided across a smooth slope of sand and logs toward the tide. Your hands press against its side. It's lighter than expected, maybe because so many hands are helping. Maybe because the excitement is lifting it. The moment the hull touches water is soft. A hush spreads. The ocean accepts the offering. Waves lap gently around the sides. The canoe sways, then settles. It floats. You feel it in your chest, something light and ancient. This is the moment all the planning, carving, wrapping, singing, and laughter was leading toward. A wooden vessel, born of tree and hand, kissed by chant and shadow, now gliding where it belongs. Someone steps in, a tall man with graying hair and a necklace of fishbone. He kneels, adjusts a coil of rope, and paddles slowly in a lazy arc. The canoe glides, balanced, graceful. Others cheer, but only gently, as if not to startle the sea. You're offered a turn. You hesitate, not out of fear but respect. Still you step in, settling onto the smooth bench carved from the very tree you watched be chosen. You take the paddle, its shaft warm in your palm. You push. The canoe moves, not far, not fast, but it moves. The E. Paddle cuts the surface like a brushstroke. The water parts, sighs, closes behind. It feels like painting with the ocean. Historians still argue whether early Polynesian canoes were more tools or more temples, whether their creators saw themselves as inventors, artisans, or priests. The truth, as always, circles quietly between definitions. You paddle once more, then drift. The canoe rocks gently like a cradle. You let the current do the work now, surrendering to the rhythm you've come to know so well. Eventually you return to shore. The canoe noses into the sand. No ceremony now, just quiet satisfaction. A hand helps you out. A smile follows. The rest of the morning moves like a song's final verse. Soft, slow, familiar. The canoe is pulled slightly above the tide line. A mat is laid beside it. You sit again, cross-legged, watching the waves roll in. One of the elders joins you, sipping something from a carved cup. "Good first launch," he says after a long, Pause, you nod. He offers you the cup. It smells like coconut and wood smoke. You sip, it tastes like tradition. The boy returns, this time with his carving, half finished. He sits beside you, tools in hand. You notice a small line forming the shape of a sail. He doesn't say anything, just carves. You sit beside him and listen to the sound of stone against wood. Other villagers pass by, headed off to daily work, net. Mending, weaving, checking traps. But the canoe remains, and so do you. The air grows warm again, but the heat doesn't press. It embraces. The sun climbs higher, casting sharp shadows beneath palm leaves. You watch them dance. In that light, the canoe almost gleams. Its curves alive, its grain rich with story. It's just a boat, maybe, but maybe not. You lie back again on the mat. The paddle rests nearby. The unfinished carving lies beside you. You feel no urgency. Nothing demands to be finished now. A breeze passes. It smells like salt and promise. The canoe waits, steady and still beside the shore, its long form casting a gentle shadow across the sand. You lie quietly, eyes half closed, as the morning sun begins its slow climb overhead. Time doesn't rush here. It sways, like the palm fronds, like the tide, like a canoe at anchor. Your breath rises and falls in sync with everything around you. Nearby, the boy continues carving. He doesn't rush either. Each motion is deliberate, smooth. You glance over and see he's added fine detail along the sail, tiny, curved lines that resemble ocean waves or maybe wind trails. It's hard to say exactly, and maybe that's the point. Like the games etched on the sand, or the patterns in bark cloth, or the chants sung at twilight, some meanings are meant to live only in motion, not definition. Someone begins humming a soft song. You turn your head and see a group of women seated beneath a thatched roof, weaving pandanus fronds into mats. Their hands work rhythmically, and the melody seems woven into the fabric. One woman sings a word you recognize, va'a, the word for canoe, but also for journey, maybe even connection. You close your eyes for a while, the music weaving through your mind like sun threads through water. When you open them again, the carving is done. The boy hands it to you with quiet pride. It's a small canoe, balanced and clean, with a tiny sail, a smooth hull, and curved outriggers extending from its sides. Your fingers trace the grooves. It fits in your palm, light but anchored with meaning. He points at the water and then at the carving. It remembers, he says. You nod. Of course it does. A mainstream historical fact floats to mind. Across the Pacific, Polynesian canoes were more than tools of travel. They were memory carriers. In Micronesia, canoes were sometimes given names that recalled distant islands. In Samoa, their design lines were said to echo constellations. To sail was not just to move, but to remember. Directions, ancestors, stories, responsibilities. Every paddle stroke was both forward motion and backward connection. You gaze again at the real canoe beside you, and then down at the small one now in your grasp. Somehow both feel like parts of the same whole. A quirky old belief resurfaces, something one of the elders mentioned last night in passing with a smirk. The canoe chooses who will dream, he'd said, not the other way around. It didn't make much sense then. It doesn't fully make sense now, but you feel chosen anyway. Around you, the rhythm of the village continues, unhurried. A young girl brings a bowl of roasted bananas and sets it beside you. She doesn't speak, just beams. The bowl is warm in your hands. You eat slowly, appreciating the caramel softness, the crisp edges where the fire kissed the fruit. You think about how many generations must have lived this same pattern, rising with the sun, singing as they wove, carving from trees that whispered in the wind. Historians still argue whether canoe making was considered a sacred art or a practical necessity, whether its rituals were symbolic or just a structured way of passing knowledge. But here now that question feels almost irrelevant. The truth is both, and neither. The truth is, you're here. You stand one more time, stretching with the ease of someone who's carried no burden but time. The canoe waits, the ocean waits, and the breeze, that ever-present companion, ruffles the edge of your tunic like a gentle reminder to keep moving. slowly, kindly, but moving still. You walk down to the water, not far, just enough to dip your toes into the sea. It's cooler now than before, refreshing. The small canoe is still in your hand. You lower it to the surface. It floats, not for long. It tilts, bobs, catches a wavelet, and then leans gently onto its side. But for that moment, it sails. A voyage complete. You smile, retrieve it, and tuck it into a pouch at your belt. A token, yes, but more than that. A story, a journey, a slow whisper across time. The boy has vanished into the trees. Maybe to carve something new, maybe to nap. You walk back to your mat, the day beginning to ripple with soft purpose. People weaving, mending, laughing, living. The canoe gleams nearby, still resting like a sleeping guardian. Your body relaxes into the mat. Your arms fold beneath your head. The sound of the waves is steady. The sunlight filters through your closed eyelids like warm amber. You let out a breath. This story doesn't end with sails unfurled and epic battles at sea. It ends here quietly, with sand in your sandals and a tiny canoe in your pocket. Because maybe the most remarkable journeys aren't the loud ones. Maybe they're the ones where you learn the art of slowing down, of carving by hand, of dreaming, in spirals and waking with purpose. And maybe, just maybe, the canoe has chosen you.